The motion be agreed to. Darian Fenton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, I think it's very disappointing that on World Refugee Day we are having the third reading of this bill. It is, well, the 20th of June, but the Minister except the Minister, it was recognised in Parliament today, and there was the Minister making nice speeches about refugees. So he's allowed to have it ahead of time, but we're not allowed to mention it. It's really important that we remember what World Refugee Day is about, and it is about remembering the 1951 Convention and its importance. And the theme of this year's World Refugee Day is that one family torn apart by conflict is one too many. Ban Ki-moon has said that on World Refugee Day, let us reaffirm the importance and burden sharing by the international community. There is nothing in this bill that speaks to that plea from Ban Ki-moon, and there is nothing to celebrate in Parliament on the World Refugee Day celebration. It didn't have to be like this, Mr Speaker, and the Minister wasn't in charge of the bill. He wasn't a minister when it had its first reading. It was Nathan Guy, as he's mentioned. And early on in the process, I wrote to Nathan Guy about this bill, and I said to him that apart from one submission, which is the fact, all submitters had expressed serious concern about the bill. They included organisations with significant human rights and refugee experience, and they've expressed their concern that the bill is a significant change in direction away from New Zealand's traditional and very positive approach to asylum seekers and refugees. They warned it's a risk to our reputation as a good international citizen. They've also raised important questions about the bill's compatibility with New Zealand's obligations under the 1951 Convention and other human rights treaties to which New Zealand is a party, and the Minister can spin all he likes. There are serious concerns about this. My letter went on to say Labor is particularly concerned that this bill may become a political football in the way that the detention and treatment of asylum seekers has become in Australia, and we are keen to explore whether there are alternatives to this. Many submitters have suggested the need for a cross-party accord, and I'm writing to ask if you would be prepared to meet to explore the potential for this. Now, I did have a meeting with them. The Greens were supportive, Peter Dunn was supportive, the Māori Party was supportive, New Zealand First was supportive, and it was like a 5-minute meeting where this idea of a cross-party approach instead of the sledgehammer of a bill was actually just essentially ignored, which is extremely disappointing, I think, for those of us who oppose this bill, who sat through the Select Committee hearings, who have met with various refugee organisations, Amnesty International, the Human Rights Commission and so on, and I know the Minister made very, very clear his disdain for those organisations in the committee stages of the bill. However, that was a genuine attempt, not a political attempt, but a genuine attempt to try to try to find some cross-party solution so that we do not end up in a situation like they have in Australia, where neither main political party can get themselves out of the mess that is now the asylum seeker detention policy. And it doesn't matter what they do, and it doesn't matter which government, they had enormous difficulties with that, and they have tried on occasion to change it. But it has now become a political issue, which is who can be the toughest. And we have Tony Abbott campaigning in the Australian election campaign about how they're going to get even tougher on asylum seekers and continue to lock them up. And it ends in tragedy so many times, as we saw boats of asylum seekers that sunk last week and they all drowned. But also, I mean, there's any amount of evidence that policy does not only work, but it also it's expensive. And it shows that, locking people up and providing the barbed wire approach that they have in Australia is much, much more expensive than actually placing people in the community while they are processed. And we had all these figures, we had all this evidence. We also had evidence during the submission stages of the bill that there is nothing about punishing the victims, the asylum seekers, that stops people smuggling. Absolutely nothing that stops it. And so this whole idea that it's going to deter people smugglers is quite ridiculous. And I think I'm absolutely convinced, Mr. Speaker, that this is about our relationship, John Key and the Minister, hobnobbing with the big boys, the big white five, including the US, the UK, Australia and Canada. And it's no accident that actually the Canadian Minister of Immigration came down to New Zealand and had a couple of secret meetings with the government just after John Key had told New Zealand in 2011 that New Zealand was well placed to deal with a mass arrival and didn't need to change anything. That we had the systems in place, and he was confident that that could be dealt with. Now, that was in May 2011. This bill was introduced in May 2012. It's now June 2013. Now, how many boats of asylum seekers have arrived in that time?
How many?
How many? How many? Can't think of any? Can't think of any.
Fewer than 10?
Fewer than 10? Less than 30? No, actually there have been none. And the Minister would like us to believe that a boatload of asylum seekers who arrived in Australia waving a flag saying they'd like to come to New Zealand constitutes a threat. It constitutes a threat. Now, we all know how ridiculous that is. The chances of a leaky boat coming from Australia, in fact, one of them was on the wrong side of Australia, so going the wrong way, but the chances of them making it here are just incredibly small. So this is much more about hobnobbing, as I said, signing up to deals, secret deals with other countries so that we can be seen to be in the same league as them. And we did see that with Mr. John Key when he met with Julia Gillard and gave away 150 of our precious refugee quota to Australia. He said it was giving them a helping hand, but what it's done is reduce 150 places for other desperate people from around the world who will never be able to come here as refugees because we've agreed to take 150 from Australia. And, that was apparently a helping hand, but I have not been able to find any evidence that the Prime Minister or the Minister of Immigration was advised about that, sought advice on that policy. There is nothing. There was nothing. But I think he made it up on the day because he thought it might make him look good with Julia. And as I say, the consequences of that are that 150 potential refugees who are sitting in camps in desperate war-torn countries with their children and have been there in many cases for years. People on the Syrian border and the Syrian conflict at the moment will never have a chance to come to New Zealand as part of our quota because we've agreed to help Australia out. I just want to dispute one little thing about the convention, and if I may, Mr. Speaker. It says, Article 31 says that there should be no presumption by receiving governments as to whether the claim of any particular asylum seeker is or is not genuine. The genuineness of each claim should only be determined after due process. Now, that is a really, there's a lot in Article 31, a lot more than the Minister read out, actually, and it's a very, very clever and well-crafted convention. But what that means is that we are breaching that part of the convention because we are presuming these people are guilty. We are presuming them by detaining them. We're presuming they're guilty by detaining them and detaining them for up to 6 months. I want to finish by saying this bill is unnecessary. It was an overreaction to a non-existent problem. It will be a stain on our international reputation.
I call David Bennett.